Welcome back to what I'm now going to refer to as Macintosh Mondays. Vintage Macintosh, anyways. This section of video we are speeding through right now was originally a 1 hour long section. I recapped the entire power supply board, or both boards anyways. Sadly, it just wasn't to be. The board was still completely dead afterwards. Absolutely 0 volts on the 5 volt standby line, which is needed to supply power to its turn-on circuit. After lamenting the loss of $30 on capacitors, I quickly switched to Plan B.
We're just going to grab, this is a micro ATX power supply. Sparkle. It's not terribly reliable, but it's got to be better than what was in this thing. Let's see, I think it's 200 watts? Yeah, 200 watts. So this will do the job. It's nice and small, so standard ATX power supply board wasn't quite going to fit in there, but this certainly will. And I will splice these wires into this output. From what I saw, the colors were the same, with the exception of like blue and white, which are the turn-on circuits. So I've got the pin out so I can confirm it after I get done. The turn-on for the Mac is positive, while the turn-on for this is negative, so a couple of 2N22 resistors, or maybe even just one of them, and 3 or 4 resistors for pull up and pull down, and this will turn on one of these. But for now I'm just going to splice it so it's automatically on. I'll come back to it after I've got the Mac actually working, because the chips on the motherboard may be problematic as well. Alright, let's do some teardown now. I'm just going to remove all of the screws in the casing, and we'll go from there. Seems to be a heat sink screwed on right here, so I'll take that screw out. There we go. Seems to have a temperature sensor right there. That's handy. Maybe that controls the speed of the fan. In fact, I think it does, because the wire for the temperature sensor goes to this little board, and the power wire to the fan goes right here. I think it said something about that on the... Where'd I go? There it is. Okay. No, must be a different power supply that I was thinking. Oh, there it is. With noise killer. So yeah. Which means it's a temperature controlled fan. Look at that, spider webs inside here. Ugh. Spider webs and dust. This is an old power supply. I actually was using it recently in one of the kids' computers, which is a i5 2500K with a GTX 1030 in it. So it's a decent enough power supply to run that machine. I've had this thing for years. I actually don't need any of this stuff back here because I've got it back there. So I do want to save this one 15 because I'm going to have to wire around that later on. I may just leave it inside the power supply if it's not going to get in the way of anything. Okay. There's that. Cut these wires. I'll cut them fairly close. This fan is not going to go into the new power supply, so I don't really need to worry about it. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off right about there. That'll leave the fan some board and leave me plenty inside the power supply. Okay, so where shall I install you? I've got some standoffs in the bottom of the case here that are going to be a real problem if I just lay this down in there. If I do it upside down. Got this little tray that it was originally sitting on. I could certainly do something like that. like this. Yeah, I think it was more like that. Yeah, this looks more like a high voltage section. So I would like to install it like this. Even though that puts the incoming power in an unfortunate location. Let's get the plastic down in place first. I'm just going to take this ferrite off here. Screw it. Okay, so the Apple fan goes here. Protective plastic is in place. Kind of got a board stand off there. Now, where was that power supply? There we go. See that heatsink that originally had its little screw in it? Let's go ahead and try and put that screw back in. I think it was this screw. One of these is not like the others. Okay, so a little plastic under it will prevent it from shorting, and this screw will keep it from sliding around. So yeah, that's the only thing mounting it, but I'm okay with that. And all of these wires are really difficult to get to. Damn. So I'm going to have to unscrew this again so that I can splice the wires together. And after I've done that, I can put this back in place. So I'm just going to have to live with them in place. I could try to hammer them out. I could take it out from my press and bang on it a little bit. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and take this out so that I can splice it in a better place. Okay, we want black and green towards the back. Black and green towards the back. Black and yellow towards the front. Going to need to remember that. Hammer, put it on my vise with the vise jaws open just on either side of the little bolt, and pounded on it until it came through. And check out this Easter egg I found in here. Apple computer. That's pretty neat. This power supply wasn't even made by them, but it was made for them, and the people that made it for them did that. Pretty cool. Alright, so that's one thing I've got to do. And then this is going to go down here as well for protection. Now I won't have that standoff pushing up in the middle of my circuit board, so the circuit board can actually sit more flat. That'd be a good thing. Now I need to splice all of these. So I got 3 reds, those are 5 volts. I got 1 yellow, that's a 12 volt. 2 blacks for ground. 3 blacks for ground. A green, a blue, and a white. So I will look at the schematic and see what green is supposed to be. Blue and white, I believe, are the turn-on circuit, power good type things. The old power supply. Don't need the ATX connector anymore. What's interesting is the hard drive power went through the motherboard on this thing. And the hard drives back then used a lot of 12 volt. There's only one 12 volt line going to the motherboard, and it passes through to the hard drive. Less than ideal. You know, the interesting thing about this is I could pound all 3 of these standoffs out. I could place the board, find the new locations, drill holes for them, and then put the standoffs that I pounded out into the new locations. But that seems a bit overkill. They're not, I don't know exactly. I think these were like pop rivet type zerks or something that are stuck in there. So probably pretty hard to put in place. You probably need a pop rivet gun, and you need fresh ones. So I'm not going to worry about it. That one heatsink will locate the whole power supply. And really, if I wanted to, I could just drill holes through the thing and then just bolt it, you know. But I'm not that worried about it. Now, what I do want to leave on here, I'm going to leave one of these hard drive connectors. So I can just run externally straight to the hard drive if I want to bypass the motherboard, which seems like a good idea to me. This is the only heat shrink tube I've got. It's clear, it's a little bit too large, but you know, it's better to be too large than too small, I guess. So we need to sit down and get to work on this. You know, I wonder if I could plug the fan, if I could desolder this and plug the fan. Speaking of which, let's get my soldering iron up to temperature. I wonder if I could put in a plug for the fan right there. Because the fan from the Mac power supply is meant to plug in like that. You know, I kind of need a right angle. I can do that. Just fold some wires and just plug it in. It would obviously go like this, which would work just fine, really. Okay, so right angle it is. I wonder if I got some spare right angle pins somewhere. Otherwise, I'll just, you know, bend some thick diode leads or capacitor leads that I've got and DIY it. So once that's up to temperature, I can start soldering these puppies together. But nice wire strippers to make my life a little bit easier. Alright, I've got it pulled up. Pin 1 is 12 volt, pin 2 is 5 volt, 3 is 5 volt, 4 is 5 volt. So, 12 volt, 555, ground, ground, negative 12, power supply on and off, and standby 5 volt. Okay, so blue is negative 12 volt. This is the power supply on and off. So this will go positive 5 volts when the power supply, when it wants to turn on the power supply. And this is 5 volt standby. So I need the pinout from the original power supply. Oh yes, pinouts are you. The Russian pinout website still exists. So I got the original plug here. It's the old, smaller ATX connector because this thing's old. So we're not using any of the oranges, which are 3.3 volt. So pin 1 is 3.3 volt, pin 2 is 3.3 volt. So we got, it must be going 1, 2 like this. Then we got ground, yep. Plus 5, ground, plus 5, ground. What's the gray one? Power OK, gray. Power OK, signal generated when DC voltages are within, yeah, we're not using the power good signal. Purple is after that. 5 volt standby. So purple is the wire that we want to hook to green. Yes. It's a very thin wire. They really don't want... Back then, they really didn't expect people to be plugging in their iPhones and trying to charge while the computer's asleep. So 5 volt standby wasn't very powerful. And it should be much the case with the Mac. So I'm hooking like an 18 gauge wire to a 20 or 22 gauge shrink tube. And then I need negative 12 volts still, so we'll do that one next. Negative 12 volt is blue on pin 12. Blue. Okay, there it is. It should be pin 11 is 3.3 volt, negative 12, and then no, negative 12, and then ground. So yeah, it's definitely the blue wire. Blue wire is going to go to, oh damn, blue goes to blue. Well, I'm glad I didn't solder that yet. So purple goes to green and blue goes to blue. That's cool. It's amazing how much this power supply follows modern standards, or you know, they haven't changed the modern standards from back in the day, and this thing followed back in the day standards. Cool. Those are good. Now let's well, I've still got some flux on the tip of this thing. No, I really don't. There we go. Let's get this desoldered. This is the fan power. There's that one. And luckily it's a one-sided board, so it's real easy. The holes are automatically open once you take the wire out. So let's turn you down a little bit because I don't want to fry this board when I go to solder it again. Now, I did look at the fan already to figure out what polarity this is going to go in. I want negative, was it? Yeah. What I want is this little lip is going to go against the board when it's going this way. So got two nice thick traces here, and I've got some needle nose down here. Yeah, there we go. So I use these to fold this. There's that one. Exactly 90 degrees. There we go. I'll keep these nice and long so I'm less likely to burn my finger while soldering them. There we go. That one hadn't been all mangled yet. So, push one through. There's one. Actually, I can just go ahead and solder the first one. There's the first one. Now let's do the second one. Close enough. You can bend these a little bit after they're soldered without damaging anything. There we go. Okay, that's done. Now we're gonna trim these to there we go. Don't want those bare leads inside the power supply. And we'll make sure that this slides on. There we go. It does. That will power the fan just fine. Perfect. I'm happy with that. Cool. As long as I plug it in the right polarity, no worries. Now, let's do some heat shrinking. These are actually the right size heat shrinks, I think. I'm just used to doing so much smaller wires. Now I got flux all over my fingertips. Okay. Get this up to temperature. Hopefully that last bit of footage shot with my phone ran out of storage space, but either way, I was just doing heat shrink, so that's all done now. We've got this white one. I'm going to extend this white one out so that I can get to it when I've built that circuit and want to actually enable the control of this thing. So this is going to go through a 1K resistor into the leg that triggers a 2N quad 2 or 2N3904, and then one of the legs is going to go to ground and the other leg is going to go to I think it was green that turns on power supply on, yeah, green. So the final leg would go to this, and I believe that I'll have a pull up on this, or maybe the power supply won't need one. I'll see. If the power supply comes on automatically, I'll have to have a pull down. So I may only need one resistor and one transistor to do this job. But it should be pretty easy enough, because and I may even need to put a pull down resistor on this as well. So anyways, yeah, 2N3904 will convert the active high into an active low quite well. Pretty simple. And finally, when I get done with this, I'm going to need to extend these leads over to this, which is going to be kind of a pain. I'm not going to worry about the output, keeping that active, so let's cut this zip tie off here. You know, there may even be enough wire in here. It's wrapped around a ferroid, so that one can go, and so can that one. So that's the output. Don't have to worry about. And I'll go ahead and cut these two off as well, because I'm going to need them off to be able to get the ferroid in there. This is to prevent electrical noise, and you know what, I just don't care. I don't have to pass an FCC compliance. So, yeah, there's a lot of extra length here, thanks to being wrapped all around that. So suddenly, I bet that this will reach. What did I drop on the floor? It was just screws. So, suddenly, I have no doubt that this is going to reach over to this, which is going to be, so it's just going to reach over to these. That's going to be no problem. So I'm going to take the extra yellows. Got some extra yellows here. And an extra yellow back here. And I'll just put some heat shrink over them. And kind of twist them together. And then I'll put a bit of heat shrink over the end of them. And that'll keep them from shorting against anything. Ta-da! Just like that. Same thing with all the oranges I'm not using, which are plus 3.3 volts. Brown was shared with red, I think. Or I mean orange. This is going to be the turn-on signal, so actually I need to splice this into a ground right now. So let's go ahead and do that. I was trying to figure out how I was going to hide it, but then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to use it. Alright, all done. Now I just do these two and mount it in the board, really. Mount it in the case. Why am I not using my good wire stripper? Oops. I need to put this back as I put this in. This is what will become my turn-on lead. I'm going to pull this so it's not... yeah, there we go. I screwed in the 115 250 volt switch right there, so it's just kind of out of the way, not flopping around. These wires are just going to tuck under the lid. I don't have a way to bring this out right now, so let's see what I can do. This is going to go on top, so it's going to cover this corner. I could take an angle grinder and cut off the corner here, but I don't know if that's going to work in the case. So for now, I'm just going to tuck this inside, and in the future, I'll have power leads for the power supply. I still need to hook in the fan's power, which is down here. So this actually sits on top of that, so this is going to be kind of a pain to get plugged in. I have powered up this fan. It's nice and quiet, so let's go ahead and plug it in back here. Now I can slide the fan in because the fan clicks in place after the top is on. The switch, it's a heat sink. Board's in there pretty well. Okay, so I need a screw here, and a screw there. That's all that holds this thing together. This is still free to wiggle around a little bit as needed to align with the motherboard. Not quite as much as it used to be, but pretty good enough. The circuit board ends just before the wires, so it's fine. Oh, incognito upgrade. Hardly know I was ever in here upgrading it with modern components. Modern, much more reliable components at that.
Looks like we're right at 30 minutes. This will be where I end it this week. Come back next week for the reassembly process and see if it all comes back to life. Again, I apologize that comments are disabled. Somehow YouTube thinks that this is a children's channel and has disabled all of my comments. I have a Uniclocker fan page on Facebook. Find me there if you have comments and questions about my videos. Remember to like and subscribe. Share this video with anyone and everyone. The more views these videos get, the more motivated I am to keep making them.